Okay, we're still working on blouses, but we're going to shift a little bit. This is the basic blouse before we changed it. I'm not sure if that's any different. No. In fact, I'm going to switch because this one has my name on it, so these two are probably old. Okay, so we traced out the pieces from these two and they still exist, but I want you to understand that the sleeve fits this pair the same way that it fits the princess set. And I want to make this sleeve fit into this armhole. You can leave this as your generic sleeve, but we're going to make a more fitted one that has a 1/2 inch of ease on each side of the shoulder, and we want to make sure that that's distributed evenly. So the way this blouse is, I'm going to turn this into a different one, and we'll call this a blousey blouse, a blouse with extra fullness, as long as that's what it means. So I'm going to add a line to this and then trace it off, and then we'll have 2 blouses for you to base things on, and this will be the sleeve to go with it. So I guess I'm going to create a line that goes from the armpit to the hem, and another one that goes from armpit to the hem. So this is just going to be a rectangular basic blouse. And I'm going to go to Create, Piece Trace. Start with my center front, go around the neck clockwise, make sure I get my dart, and I'm going to use the straight line, the straight bottom, say OK. The internal lines I can put the 2 darts on there in case for some reason I want to put a dart there, and I'm going to put in my bust point. But I don't really need anything else. I'll say OK, and instead of my front map, it's going to be my blouse front fullness. And you know, I can't tell you why sometimes I spell out the word all the way and other times I don't. There really is no good reason. Clockwise and in order, say OK. Choose your markings just in case you want to use them later. Oh, there we go. And say OK. Okay, so I've got a front blouse with fullness and a back blouse with fullness. And I'm just going to set those off to the side. And I'm going to add these 2 pieces to the model. Add pieces, my blouse, choose, say OK, and now there's more. Okay, so I could have balanced this sleeve to the main one, but apparently that wasn't where I'm going. So I want to look at the armhole on this blouse, so I'm going to align this line to that one. So I'm going to flip this over modify piece flip, and I'm going to flip it around the hem, and I'm also going to flip it around the center. So now it's aligned so that it can be lined up with this piece, and I'm going to start at the far corner and bring that to it. Modify, set, rotate, select match point on target piece is going to be the outer edge of my shoulder and the line, outer edge and the line, and cancel. So now I have this armhole. I could move the dart temporarily, but I don't need to. So we're going to walk this around and plan the armhole with the sleeve, and we'll make sure that there's a 1/2 inch of ease on each side. It might not be quite that simple. I think I've got extra fullness in this one. Okay, verify, walk pieces, select the lines on the stationary pieces. That looks just right. Say OK on the walk piece, and I want it to go from the other direction because I want the back both times to start with. And say OK. So how am I doing right there? Well, it appears that we are slightly off on the notches, but the shape of the armhole is very similar to the original, and that's a good thing. So I'm going to leave the notches where they are on the body, and I'm going to change them where they are on the sleeve. So I'm going to go into modify, delete, notch. So I'm making sure I've got the sleeve. I'm going to get both of them and say OK, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add them. But you can do it by measurement if you're more comfortable with that. And I think it would be better if I had done it by measurement. But it's just all lined up right there so nicely. Okay. So I'm going to go from the opposite direction this time. Verify, walk pieces. Change direction. Say OK. Select the line on the piece that's moving. Change direction. Say OK. Uh-oh. Well, I should have changed direction on the very first line. So we're going to cancel that and try it again. Verify, walk pieces, select the lines on the stationary piece. At this point right here, I have to right click and say change direction, and then choose the rest. And then choose the line on the walk piece and change direction. And now it works. Okay. Well, I have a discrepancy there too. So I'm going to delete my notch. Well, how am I going to pick up the sleeve? There they are. And create notch, and I'm going to start on the line and just line it up right there where the dart is. And then if I just use it with the dart, it'll always be in the right place. And if I move the dart, that'll be fine too. Okay, so we've identified the space between the side seam and the notch on both sides. Now we need to work with balancing the fullness on both sides. And I'm going to split the line right here where the notch is so that it's easier for me. So modify line split right there on the notch. And remember, if you would rather, when you create a notch, you can right click. Well, you'd have to go into verify line length measure, and you would measure both. You'd measure this line and then you would add the notch on that line based on that measurement. Okay, so now when I walk this piece, I can just come to here because I've already established that line. Edit. I do that every time. Walk pieces is in verify. Select the lines on the stationary pieces, and I need to get rid of my clear all. It's not the sleeve. The lines on the stationary piece are that one and that one. Say OK, and there we go. So I'm walking it around, and I'm going to pause right here because my notch is way off. And I'm going to go ahead and put a notch right here where that lines up exactly. But I don't want it on that piece, so I have to choose the sleeve again. And that is right where the shoulder seam is. And there's our original notch. And that looks like more than an inch of fullness, so now we're going to walk it back the other way from here. Verify walk pieces. Clear. This line, change direction. This line. This line. Say OK. Choose the sleeve cap. Change direction. Say OK. And that one is quite a bit off too. So I'm going to set it down right there and add my notch. And isolate my sleeve. Okay. So I'm going to split the line on all three of those notches. Modify line split. Wait till the notch highlights. Slide and release. Okay. So if I go into verify measure line length and choose those three, I've got a little over 1 1/8 and a little less than 1 1/2, and I want a 1/2 inch on both of those. So the actual center of the ease right now, if I wanted to leave this sleeve alone and add gathers to it, I could just go in and modify line combine and combine those two and delete this notch, and then I could go in and create a notch, right click in the water and say midpoint and select a line to locate the midpoint and say OK, and now my notch is exactly in the center. So, and you can replay that. But the idea is that this is the extra fullness. This is the space that it takes up on both sides of the sleeve. The other notches are marked, and this is left over. So I want to divide the ease exactly in half. So that's where my ease center point is. It's not the center of the sleeve. Modify line, split again. And so I've got 1.303 on both sides. Okay, so with that information, we have a 1/2 inch of ease on both sides, plus about 5/8 of an inch that will gather on both sides. So if I were making a blouse with a slightly gathered sleeve, I could just stop there and call that my blouse. But with the information I have, if I create a 2-point line right here, right across the top of the cap, well, the bottom of the cap, then I can find the center of this line too. So I'm going to create a perpendicular line on this line. I want a whole line so it goes in both directions, so I clicked on the whole button before. Now I'm going to right click in the water and say midpoint and choose that line, and it's automatically going exactly in the center, and I can pull that out long enough that it goes to the bottom of the sleeve. So this is my grain line, the exact center of the sleeve, and my notch is slightly forward, which means my armhole in front is slightly smaller than my armhole in back. But I still have to keep my notch centered on the ease, which is why the notch is not on the fold line. And it looks like that grain line might actually be a tiny bit off. So I will need to fix that before I'm through, but I don't need to do it right now because I'm going to mess with the sleeve. But I am going to save this just the way it is. File, save as. Instead of Louise sleeve 1, I'm going to call it Louise sleeve minimal fullness. And I'm going to add it to my model. So I already have that one balanced for future use. And I might want to lengthen it or shorten it or make the bottom wider, a whole bunch of different things, but I've already balanced my ease and I have a slight amount of fullness. I'm used to looking at them sideways, so I'm going to balance this to the front because I can tell that my notch is off, my grain line is slightly off. So modify, select rotate, select the match point on the target piece. Oh, I have to clear that again. Just somewhere on the center front because it's level. And this line that I know is actually centered. Say cancel. And now I'm going to change the grain line. So modify, realign. This time I'm going to say grain line instead of piece, and then we'll just watch and see if that changes. And it did. It actually disappears behind the line, so it's where we want it. So I'm going to go ahead and save that piece because that's how I want that one to be. Now I have to figure out how to get rid of everything more than a half of an inch of ease on each side. So with my calculator, I'm going to subtract, well, 1.303 minus 0.5 is 0.803. So I need to subtract just less than 7/8 of an inch right here, 0.803. So I'm going to split the piece, and that's going to be an advanced, fullness, tapered. Advanced, fullness, tapered. Create a slash line from pivot end to open end. So I'm going to start here at the bottom edge of the sleeve, and I want to zoom in bigger. So I'm going to start right here in the center of the sleeve, and I'm going to come up to the notch and say okay. And the location that's remaining stationary is the hem. The internal lines that are moving, wow, do I want to move any? Not at this time. And I want to switch to value and say negative 0.8. So that just overlapped right there. And because of the way I did it, I'm going to delete that point. Modify, delete, point. This is just a point, and it's wrapped around it. Well, that made it worse. No, it didn't. I just need to delete that one too. And that one. Okay, so I made that side smaller by 0.8. So this side is now a half an inch, and this side is bigger. So this time I'm going to come to this notch and hope that that works out better, and I'll probably have to realign my piece. We're going back up to advanced, fullness, tapered, slash line from pivot end to open end. The pivot end is the tiny end, and the open end is the one that's going to change a lot. So I'm coming to that notch. Okay, the location to remain stationary is going to be at the bottom. The internal lines to move are none. And negative 0.8 again. Oh, that isn't. So we need to delete this point this time. Modify, delete point. Well, I don't like how that looks at all. So that is one way. There is more cleanup to do on it. I think part of the problem is what I did right here on my hold line, and you can see that this moved. So I'm going to delete my lines. And fix it again. Create 2-point line from switch to cursor to there. OK, swap, modify line, swap, choose the straight line, trade it for the solid curved line, say OK, delete the line. But I accidentally deleted that one and I don't want to, so I'm going to undo that because I caught that there. And I'm going to move this away. So now I'm going to say swap again, but I won't get that piece. And then delete the line. Oh, well, that is just not what I meant. Oh, I had already swapped it, hadn't I? See? Alright, so I'm going to draw another line right here. And it's going to be interesting to find out if this line is actually parallel to that one at some point. Create line 2-point. So I think if I had it to do over, I might have done that differently. But this is what we have to start from, so. Alright, I'm going to create a 2-point line, but I'm going to midpoint both lines. So I'm going to choose the bottom edge and then that line. And now I have a line that goes through them. And I will line this up again. Modify set rotate. Match point on set piece. Line to line up. Cancel. Say OK, move the piece. So now my sleeve is back to balanced again. But I'm going to fix the grain line. Realign, grain, choose the grain line. OK. So it's balanced, but this is ugly. And I think, well, I'll walk it and see, but we're going to have to move that notch again and make this line prettier. So I'm going to save this as a different piece because I don't want to overwrite my other one. So I'm going to do save as again, and this can be my sleeve with 1 inch of ease. Can I put in an inch mark? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to save that one to the model too. Alright, before I do anything with this, well, we'll do it the other way so you get to see both. Modify line, combine. Well, that is not encouraging because it should be 1. Which means I probably took some space out of this line. So I'm going to choose, not merging, cancel. I want to verify my line length. Now that one's probably going to turn off. Yep, it did. So here's another way to see what's happening. I have 2.769 and 2.778. Modify line, combine again. Oh, before I do that, I have 4.1 and 4.7. So in addition to measuring this one by number instead of physically, when I tapered this part of the sleeve in, I took it out of this line instead of that one like I meant to do. So I've got a closer space. So what I'm going to do, for now I don't want these two lines in my way, so I'm going to delete them. And I've made the sleeve narrower like it would need to be, but at this point you also want to check the person that's going to be wearing it. Our dress form doesn't technically have an arm. I'm going to undo what I just did there because I want that line back. So if I measure line length, the bicep number, that's 11.5. And that's a little concerning because your average armhole bicep is 12. She's a size 8, she might be smaller. If the person you're putting this on has a 12-inch bicep, you'll need to make that 13 inches across. And if you were to do that, you would go back to the other sleeve. We're going to continue down this path and say she's got smaller arms. But if you're planning, well, okay. For your final project, everything has to fit the dress form, so this will be adequate. If you might be wanting to put it on someone at the end, then you may want to take their measurements and double check them and go at it a slightly different way. So we will keep this as our sleeve that just has the exact amount of ease necessary. So I'm going to align the sleeve with the armhole right here. Modify, select, set, rotate, match point on target piece. I'm going to use that line this time. And I'm going to create line copy the armhole from the blouse onto the sleeve. So I need to highlight which sleeve have I got? And then cancel so it ends up in the same place. And maybe if you don't know where this is headed, you might just want to watch for a minute and then go back to wherever we are right now. And I can't see that number, so double check. And I'm going to do the same thing with the back armpit. Modify, set, rotate, select the match point on the target piece. Clear. and the line and the point and the line again. Cancel, say OK, and copy this line to the sleeve. Create line, copy this line, say OK, choose the sleeve, say OK, you have the line, cancel, it will end up exactly where it started, and say OK. So I now have those two reference lines, which I may or may not need, but I'm going to put my piece back to where it was because it works better in my head. Modify, realign, piece this time. So when I saved it upside down last time, it kept that. And because I'm going to play with it from this point, I'm going to save it now so I can come back to this. And when it says I've got duplicate points, I'm just going to say yes and overwrite. So the real total that I want, I'll bring the calculator back up, is 8.084 plus 4.702 plus 2.778 plus 1 equals 16 and a half plus a little bit. So I could go with 16 and 5/8 if I wanted to, between 16 and a half and 16 and 5/8. I want to look at the sleeve cap on the person that's going to be wearing this and see how tall their cap is. And most of you have been through and measured a cap height, and it's from the center of the top of the sleeve to the cap level line, and that's 5.226. So this is really why we ended up changing the other sleeve. Most students don't want gathers in their sleeves. When I started with this, I was making a sleeve to fit a slightly larger arm. And it may well be that the person that is going to wear this has a smaller arm and a shorter cap height. If you're looking to fit someone with a taller cap height, then you would need to go back to our original sleeve that's a little bit bigger. So I've brought it in. I kind of want to widen my cap width across here a little bit, but we're working on making a sleeve cap that only has a 1/2 inch ease per side. So I'm also going to, but I need to flip one. Modify piece, flip, and I want to flip this piece around its grain line. So now I have my back and my back, and my front and my front. Create line, copy, I want the other sleeve, sleeve 1. I want that line to copy to that one. Say okay, there it is, cancel, and it's there. Okay. Oh, clear. Alright, there is probably a hotkey for clear, and right now I'm kind of wishing I knew that one. Oh, speaking of, I was going to tell you there is a reference book that you can get. My favorite one is to an older version of the software, so I'll try to remember to post that one. But I think it's by Angela Cruz. Okay, I want to keep it within this space, but I want to add some curve back because it's fitting into that armhole space. So this is helpful. I've narrowed my cap, but I'm going to try to put back a little bit and see where we get. Create 2-point curve, starting from about here. Are you sure about that? To here where it starts to switch direction. And that looks pretty good. And from here where it starts to switch direction and come back into the notch. Okay, and I didn't mess up that part as badly. So sleeves are kind of nebulous creatures. You can do it the way that you do it in the book if you would rather do it that way. They're also kind of nice and forgiving. So I'm going to clip this line where it joins the one that I want to go with. Modify line clip. I want this part of the line until it runs into that one. That could be slightly smoother, but it's not bad. And I want this part of the line until it runs into that one. And we've got some overlap, so that's a good join. So I'm going to modify line swap, and clockwise in an order I'm going to choose, well, that's just scary. Now that may not work without me blending. It worked okay though. So I'm going to delete the line. And I'm going to merge the line. Combine. The command is combine. It used to be merge, and I say it wrong sometimes. Alright, so those are all graded points because they're upside down. And if you want to fix that, edit point information, choose that point, and apply to both ends, and just push the delete button and apply. Go to the next one. In a work setting, still got one. I've been catching it from this side of the line, so I'm going to try it again from this side. And you're going to need to know how to do that, so I keep showing you how when I run across it. Edit point information. This time I'm coming from that way, and I got one. Delete, apply, okay. So that will need to be tidied up, but I might as well measure it. Verify line length. 16.92. And okay, so minus 16.92 is 3/8 of an inch. I have 3/8 of an inch of extra ease that I need to get rid of. I would rather work really hard at easing it in all the way along the armhole than get rid of it. But if you want to get rid of it, you can take it in a little bit more. So that's point. Maybe we'll just get rid of 0.3. So we'll try this thing again. Modify. No, advanced, fullness, tapered. Slash line from pivot end to open end. This time I'm going to make this be my location to remain stationary, internal lines to move. Well, we'll try it. Say OK, and switch to value. And what was it? I closed the calculator. Okay. Negative 0.3. So I need to delete that point. Modify, delete point. And now it's 16.625, which is 5/8, which is slightly more than we needed, but we can ease that in. So if I decide I want that a little smoother, I probably need a notch right there, but I could go in and delete point, and I think that one, no, it's that one. One at a time. Sometimes you can just delete points and have it be okay, and others, it depends on how many points are around it. That changed a little bit. It's 16.61. But that's actually closer to what we want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to line it back up on the piece and put my notches back where I want them and then remeasure. Verify line length. Other sleeve cap. Ooh, that one's big. The one we really want is this. Yeah, you all saw me go past it, didn't you? But I can't hear you, so there it is. 16.614 minus 8.084 minus 4.702 minus 2.7 2.778 equals 1.05. That gives me a good ½ inch on each side. That is perfectly easable. Make it small. And this is my back side. I know because I deleted a notch right there. So modify, set, rotate. This corner of this line, this corner of this line, and because it was on value already, it just went right to the right place. So we want the notch there, and we could even pull that in a little bit. No, we can't, because that's the armhole, not the sleeve. So I want to put a notch at a distance from this point at 2.778. So create standard notch, right click in the water and say distance from point, choose this piece and slide to the end of the corner, and we want this one to go backwards counterclockwise, so negative 2.778. Say OK, and our notch is exactly where it belongs. Modify, line, split, right there on the notch, and 2.778. And from that point, we can do the same thing. Create notch, right click, distance from point, select the point to measure the distance from, enter a negative number again because it's counterclockwise, negative 4.702, and that's where our actual armhole ends. And with the back, I don't know if it will hurt your head if I don't, so I'm going to flip the sleeve over. Modify sleeve, flip, about line. So I want to know how far those notches are from the edge, so I need to split the line again. Modify line, split, and if you are planning ahead really well, there it says notch, so I'm going to release, slide until it gets to notch, and then release. You could go through and split all the things and leave them. And 1.711 and 1.714. OK. Modify line, combine these two. And I'm going to delete the notch because it's so close. Create notch. It's still on value, so I'm going to right click and say distance from point. Choose that point. Now the sleeve has been flipped. There is a 50-50 chance that if I tell it to go in a negative direction, it will end up down here. But I'm going to go positive and say 1.714. Say OK. And it went the other way because the piece is flipped. So I'm going to say OK again. Right click in the water and say distance from point, and this time I'm going to give it a negative number. And if I had thought and said undo, right then I wouldn't have to delete it, but I would rather just delete it now. This time I'm going to start from my notch and say negative 0.503 and say OK. So now all my notches are at the same distance. I can split those to make sure. Modify line split, but you know, and you make sure that that square right there with where it says notch is highlighted, not the intermediate point next to it, but the notch. Oops. Well, that was bad. Undo. That means I've got an intermediate point right there. And I'm going to look for it. Nope, not that one. So I can just touch it. There, that one. Say OK. Because I don't want the points on top of each other. Modify line split. OK, so they match exactly. Part of this is taking longer, and that might be frustrating, but the good thing about it is that it's taking longer because we're covering things that you need to know to work on your projects. So for the things that don't seem like they're important, I will just put on the quiz. And again, with that, you can watch the video and take the quiz at the same time. Well, I'm ready to stop this video and start a new one, but we need to finish the thought. So I'm going to line this back up and verify, modify, set rotate, and my match point is here and my line, and my match point is the outside corner and my line. And when it's on value, unless I give it a distance, if it's already on 0, it will just go there. Okay. So I've deleted the additional notches. I could do this by measurement. So let's get the calculator out. 5.867. 5.867 plus 4.702 is 10.569 minus 11.618. And yes, I know I'm going to get a negative number, but it's the right number. So divided by 2 is 0.524. I'm going to walk this around. Verify, walk pieces. This one, change the direction. We saw what happened when we don't. Say OK. The walk line, change direction, say OK. So it's not moving because it's on value. You're going to run into that when things aren't moving right. Double check this little box and when it's on cursor it will move. So I can set that down right there and put a notch. Because I need to divide my ease. And verify walk again. This time from this side. Say OK. Oh, well, no wonder. I did it wrong last time. It is time to stop this video. Okay. That looks better. Create notch. On the sleeve. I touched down in the sleeve when I was further away, so it made it easier to get that point. And I'm going to delete that notch that I put in from the front that's on the wrong side. So do you see how I moved away from the piece until it turned green, and then I'm going to touch and slide? That's how you isolate a point. So now I'm going to walk from that way. This line, change direction. This line, that's the right direction. Say OK. Oh, well. I made them both stationary pieces. Say OK. Choose the line. Change direction. Say OK. And I'm sure you know this and it's obvious, but we're going to start getting into longer videos sometimes. So if you get sick of it, just write down where you were and come back. Modify, line, split, just like we did last time. Because we want our ease divided exactly in between the two. And create notch, right click in the water, midpoint, choose the midpoint, say OK. That's now our notch position with the equally divided ease, and I'm going to delete the other two. Why won't it delete that one? What have I done? Oh, well, that modify line combine. Sometimes it won't do it when you're on a corner. So it's this one. All right. So I'm going to realign it. Say OK. And I will need to double check that, and you can see visually if I line it up on that center line, it is slightly forward because the line in front is slightly shorter. And I want to save this one because it's the corrected 1 inch of ease. Save, choose piece, say OK, overwrite, and it's already in the model. So I've changed the piece. I don't have to change the model again. It's already in there because it has the same name. The piece itself has changed.